The council chamber was silent. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the ears and made the heart beat faster. Admiral Park Ho stood in the center of the massive room, his uniform crisp and his back straight. Around him, the representatives of 42 alien species looked down from their elevated seats. Their eyes held no warmth. Their faces showed no mercy. The year was 2247. Humanity had worked for decades to earn a place among the stars. They had built ships, learned new languages, and followed every rule the Galactic Assembly had created. And now, after only 3 years of membership, they stood accused of a crime they did not commit. The crime was simple. A fleet of Helix raiders had attacked the human colony on Myra 7. The raiders had killed 2,000 civilians in a single night. When the colony called for help, the nearest Earth ships responded. They fought back. They won. And in doing so, they had broken the most important rule of the Galactic Assembly. No member species could engage in military action without council approval. Counselor of the Dominion rose from his seat. He was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His voice echoed through the chamber like the sound of stones falling into deep water. "The humans have shown their true nature," said. "They are violent, they are reckless, they cannot be trusted to follow our laws." Admiral Park stepped forward. "We defended our people. The Helix killed innocent families. Children died in that attack. Were we supposed to wait for permission while more of our citizens burned?" A murmur passed through the chamber. Some of the delegates shifted in their seats, but simply smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "The law is the law," he said. "You were warned when you joined this assembly. Military action requires authorization. You did not seek it. You did not wait. You acted alone, as your species always does." Behind Admiral Park, Doctor closed her eyes. She was the diplomatic, the one who had spent years building bridges with other species. She had believed that understanding and patience would earn humanity respect. Now she saw the truth. The Council had never wanted humanity to succeed. They had been waiting for an excuse, and humanity had given them one. Commander stood beside her, his hands pressed flat against his sides. His younger sister had been on Myra 7. She had been a teacher at the colonial school. She had died trying to protect her students from the Helix raiders, and now the Council was punishing humanity for fighting back. Raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent once more. "The vote has been taken," he announced. "By a majority of 31 to 11, the Galactic Assembly has reached its decision. Humanity is hereby exiled from the galactic community. All trade agreements are canceled. All technology sharing is forbidden. Human ships are banned from traveling beyond the borders of your solar system. Any human vessel found in galactic space will be destroyed without warning." The words hit like physical blows. Admiral Park felt his chest tighten, but he did not let his face change. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing his pain. "You are making a mistake," he said quietly. Laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. "We have made many decisions over the centuries, Admiral. None of them have been mistakes. Your species is young and foolish. Perhaps in 1,000 years, when you have learned patience and humility, we will reconsider. Until then, return to your little planet and be grateful we do not destroy you outright." The guards approached. They were soldiers, armed with plasma rifles that hummed with deadly energy. Admiral Park held up his hand to stop his officers from reacting. "We will leave," he said. "But remember this moment, Counselor. Remember the day you chose to punish the victims instead of the attackers." Waved his hand dismissively. "Words from a dying species. Take them away." The walk back to the human ship felt endless. The corridors of Prime were crowded with aliens who watched them pass. Some looked curious. Others looked satisfied. A few, very few, looked troubled. One of them was an elderly diplomat, a small being with soft fur and large, gentle eyes. They had always been kind to humans. They were farmers and philosophers, not warriors. As the human delegation passed, The diplomat reached out and touched Admiral Park's sleeve. "I am sorry," she whispered. "The Council does not speak for all of us. There are those who believe you were right to defend your people." Admiral Park nodded once. "Thank you. Your kindness will not be forgotten." Then they were aboard their ship, and the doors closed behind them. Doctor sat down heavily in her seat. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We have no allies, no trade partners, no access to the technology we need to keep growing." Commander slammed his fist against the wall. "They are protecting the Helix. The raiders who murdered my sister are still out there, and the Council has just told them they can do whatever they want without consequences." Admiral Park stood at the viewport, watching Prime shrink as their ship pulled away. The stars beyond were cold and distant. For the first time in his life, they felt hostile. "They think we will wither and die," he said slowly. "They think that without their technology and their trade, humanity will collapse. They believe we are weak." He turned to face his officers. His eyes burned with a fire that had not been there before. "They are wrong. We have been underestimated before. When we were confined to one planet, they said we would never reach the stars. When we built our first colony ships, they said we would fail. When we joined the assembly, they said we were not worthy. Every time we proved them wrong." Doctor looked up. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Park Ho sat down in his command chair. "We go home. We tell our people what happened here, and then we build. We build ships. We build weapons. We build a future that does not depend on the mercy of those who have none." Commander straightened his shoulders. "And then?" The Admiral smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only determination. "And then we show them what humanity can do when it has nothing left to lose." The ship entered hyperspace, leaving the Council and its judgment behind. In the darkness of space, no one saw them go. No one cared. That was their first mistake. The news reached Earth before Admiral Park's ship did. The Council had made sure of that. They wanted humanity to feel afraid. They wanted panic and despair to spread through the population like a disease. Instead, something else happened. President Bin stood before the United Earth Assembly 3 days after the exile was announced. The chamber was packed. Every seat was filled, and thousands more watched from screens across the planet. The president was a small woman with short hair and calm eyes. She had led humanity through difficult times before, but nothing had prepared anyone for this. "They have cast us out," she said. Her voice was steady and clear. "They have told us we are not worthy of standing among them. They have closed the door to the stars and thrown away the key." She paused. The silence in the chamber was complete. "They expect us to give up. They expect us to argue among ourselves, to blame each other, to fall apart. They think we are children who cannot survive without their guidance." Her eyes swept across the assembly, and when she spoke again, her voice had an edge of steel. "They do not know us. They do not understand what humanity has overcome to reach this moment. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived wars that nearly destroyed us. And each time we came back stronger. This will be no different." She raised her hand and pointed upward, toward the ceiling, toward the sky, toward the stars beyond. "If they will not share their technology, we will build our own. If they will not trade with us, we will become self-sufficient. If they think the door is closed forever, we will build our own door. And when we open it, the galaxy will understand that humanity does not beg. Humanity does not break. Humanity rises." The chamber erupted in applause. It was not the polite clapping of politicians. It was the roar of people who had found their purpose. Within a week, Project Horizon was born. General Oh Sung was chosen to lead the project. He was a quiet man who had spent most of his career building infrastructure on the outer colonies. He did not seek glory or fame. He simply got things done. The first challenge was building shipyards that the Council would not detect. Their satellites watched Earth constantly. Any large construction project on the surface would be noticed and destroyed. So humanity went underground. Massive tunnels were carved beneath the surface of Luna. The moon's low gravity made construction easier, and its lack of atmosphere meant no one could see the work from space. Within a year, the first underground shipyard was operational. Within 2 years, there were 7 more, spread across the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Engineer Mira led the propulsion team. She was 34 years old and had been designing spacecraft engines since she was a teenager. When the Council revoked humanity's access to jump drive technology, many believed they would be trapped in their own solar system forever. Mira refused to accept that. She gathered every fragment of alien technology that humanity had collected over the years: old crash sites, abandoned probes, the broken remains of a scout ship that had malfunctioned near Mars decades ago. Piece by piece, she and her team studied how the jump drives worked. "They think we are stupid," she told her engineers one night, her hands covered in grease and her eyes red from lack of sleep. "They think we could never understand their technology without their help, but they forgot something important. We learned to fly by watching birds. We learned to navigate by watching stars. We have always learned from observing others, and now we have observed enough." 3 years after the exile, the first Eclipse drive was activated. It did not just match the Council's technology, it exceeded it. Where their drives could fold space once, the Eclipse drive could fold it twice, cutting travel time in half. At the same time, a man named Lee was working on weapons. Lee had been discharged from the military years ago for what his superiors called dangerous ideas. He had proposed using kinetic weapons, simple projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, against enemy shields. The military had laughed at him. Energy weapons were the galactic standard. Shields were designed to stop energy. Kinetic weapons were considered primitive and useless. But Lee had seen something the others had missed. The shields were designed to stop energy because no one in the galaxy used kinetic weapons anymore. They had forgotten how to defend against something they considered obsolete. General Oh Sung found Lee working as a maintenance technician on a cargo station near Neptune. He offered him unlimited resources and complete freedom to build whatever he wanted. Lee accepted. The result was the cannon. It fired a small metal slug wrapped in a shell of superheated plasma. The plasma disrupted shields just long enough for the slug to pass through. Once inside, the kinetic force did the rest. In tests, a single round punched through 3 meters of reinforced armor. "They have been fighting the same way for 10,000 years, Lee explained to General Oh Sung. "They have never faced anything new. They will not know how to respond to this." The shipyards worked day and night. Thousands of workers gave up their normal lives to build humanity's future. They slept in crowded dormitories. They ate simple food. They worked until their hands bled. And they did it willingly because they believed in what they were building. Songs spread through the shipyards. Workers sang them as they welded hulls and installed engines. The most popular one had a simple chorus that echoed through the tunnels. "They locked the door, we build the key, they fear our night, but dawn they will see." Admiral Park Ho visited the shipyards often. He walked among the workers, shaking hands and learning names. He watched as the first battleship took shape, its hull dark and angular, designed to absorb sensors rather than reflect them. "What will you call her?" he asked General Oh Sung. The general thought for a moment. "Defiance," he said, "because that is what she represents." 5 years after the exile, the first Horizon fleet was complete. 200 warships, 50 supply vessels, 30 medical frigates. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, and not a single alien had any idea it existed. President Bin came to inspect the fleet on the day of its completion. She stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, looking out at the rows of ships stretching into the darkness. "We built this in secret," she said quietly. "We built it in silence. The galaxy does not know what is coming." Admiral Park stood beside her. When should we reveal ourselves? The president turned to face him. Her eyes were hard with resolve. When the time is right, when the galaxy gives us a reason to step out of the shadows, and when we do, we will not ask for permission. We will not beg for mercy. We will simply show them what they created when they cast us out. In the darkness of space, the fleet waited, silent, patient, ready. The galaxy had no idea that everything was about to change. 10 years had passed since the exile, 10 years of silence, 10 years of watching and waiting. The galaxy had forgotten about humanity. The great races of the Galactic Assembly spoke of Earth the way adults speak of children who have been sent to their rooms. Sometimes they wondered if the humans were still alive. Sometimes they made jokes about the primitive species that had dared to challenge the Council. Mostly, they did not think about humanity at all. That was exactly what Admiral Park Ho wanted. He sat in the command chair of the HSS Defiance, his hair now at the temples, his face lined with the weight of years. But his eyes were still sharp and his mind was sharper. Around him, the bridge crew worked in quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment for a decade. They were ready. Captain stood beside him. She was no longer the young diplomat who had believed in peaceful negotiation. The exile had changed her. She had put away her formal robes and learned to command a warship. The galaxy had taught her that words meant nothing without the strength to back them up. "Intelligence report from officer," she said, handing him a tablet. "You should see this." Admiral Park read the report twice. His expression did not change, but his grip on the tablet tightened. Intelligence officer Wu Jin had spent years building a network of informants across the galaxy. It was dangerous work. If the Council discovered what he was doing, they would have killed him without hesitation. But the information he gathered was worth the risk. The report contained a single terrible fact. The Helix Corsairs, the same raiders who had attacked the human colony on Myra 7-10 years ago, were now officially working for the Dominion. They had been given ships, weapons, and a target. The Admiral Park remembered the elderly diplomat who had touched his sleeve on the day of the exile. She had been kind when no one else was. She had said that not everyone agreed with the Council. They were a peaceful people. They grew food that they shared freely with other species. They had welcomed humanity's early explorers and taught them how to grow crops in alien soil. Now the Helix were coming to harvest them. That was what the raiders called their attacks. Harvesting. They would take everything of value, kill anyone who resisted, and leave nothing but ashes behind. Commander arrived on the bridge. He had changed too in the past decade. The angry young man who had slammed his fist against the wall was now a calm, focused officer. But the memory of his sister still burned inside him. He had never forgotten what the Helix had taken from him. "You have seen the report?" Admiral Park asked. "I have," Commander replied. 600 Helix ships. They will reach the system in 48 hours. Captain pulled up a star map. The glowed blue in the center. It was peaceful and beautiful, covered in vast farms and gentle forests. They had never built weapons. They had never needed them. They believed that kindness would protect them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "The Council will not intervene," Officer Wu Jin said. He had joined them on the bridge, his face tired from long nights of gathering intelligence. "I intercepted communications between thee and the Council leadership. This attack was approved. They refused to vote against humanity during the exile. This is their punishment." Silence fell over the bridge. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone. Admiral Park looked at the star map. The system was deep in galactic space, far beyond the borders humanity had been forbidden to cross. If they went there, they would be breaking the exile. They would be declaring to the galaxy that humanity was back. There would be no going back. "Sir," Commander said quietly, "they helped us when no one else would. They did not have to. They knew it would make them enemies. But they did it anyway because it was right." Captain nodded. "If we do nothing, 6 billion will die. The Council will continue to believe they can do whatever they want, and the helix will grow even stronger. Admiral Park did not respond immediately. He was thinking about the weight of the decision. He was thinking about the men and women on his ships, the families they had left behind, the lives they might lose if they went to war. But he was also thinking about something else, something that had burned inside him for 10 years. The galaxy had thrown humanity away. They had called humans primitive and violent. They had punished them for defending innocent lives, and then they had forgotten about them. It was time to remind the galaxy that humanity still existed. "Set course for the system," Admiral Park said. His voice was calm and steady. "All ships, we move in 1 hour." The bridge erupted in controlled activity. Officers relayed orders. Navigation plotted courses. Engineering confirmed that the Eclipse drives were ready. Commander stood at attention. "Sir, when we cross the border, the Council will detect us. They will know we are coming." Admiral Park smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in years. "Let them know," he said. "Let them watch. Let them see what they created when they cast us into the darkness." The fleet began to move. 200 warships slipping through the void like shadows. Their Eclipse drives engaged, folding space in ways the Council thought impossible. No one saw them coming. No one could have stopped them even if they had. On the observation deck of the Defiance, Admiral Park stood alone, looking out at the stars. "We are about to change everything," Captain said, joining him. "Yes," he replied, "we are." "Are you afraid?" Admiral Park considered the question. Fear was a natural thing. Every soldier knew fear. The difference between a coward and a hero was not the absence of fear. It was what you did despite the fear. "I was afraid once," he said, "when they cast us out, when they told us we were nothing, but I am not afraid anymore. I know what we have built. I know what our people can do. The galaxy should be afraid of us." The stars stretched and blurred as the fleet entered fold space. For a moment, everything was silent and still. Then they were through, emerging on the other side of the galaxy in a place where humans had never been before. The system lay ahead, peaceful and unaware of the storm that was coming. But the storm was not aimed at them. On his command chair, Admiral Park opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Park Ho," he said. 10 years ago, the galaxy told us we did not belong among the stars. Today, we prove them wrong. We go not as conquerors, but as protectors. We fight not for revenge, but for justice. Remember why we are here. Remember who we are, and show the galaxy what humanity can do." The fleet moved forward, engines burning bright against the darkness. The silence was about to end. The Helix fleet arrived with the confidence of hunters who had never known defeat. 600 ships spread across the sky like a dark cloud, their weapons charging, their crews eager for the harvest to begin. Commander, the Helix fleet leader, looked down at the peaceful planet below. He saw vast green fields, gentle rivers, and cities built from white stone. He saw millions of soft, frightened creatures who had never held a weapon in their lives. He smiled. This would be easy. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Take everything of value. Kill anyone who resists. We leave nothing behind." The first Helix ships descended toward the surface. On the ground, they watched with terror. They had sent messages to the Galactic Assembly begging for help. No one had answered. They knew they were alone. Then the sky tore open. It happened so fast that the Helix sensors barely registered it. One moment, there was empty space. The next, 200 ships appeared out of nowhere, their hulls dark and angular, their weapons already glowing with deadly energy. Commander stared at his screens in confusion. "What is this? Where did they come from?" His sensor officer's voice shook with fear. "Unknown configuration, unknown drive signatures. They do not match any species in our database." A communication channel opened. A human voice filled the bridge, calm and cold. "This is Admiral Park Ho of the United Earth Fleet. You have 10 seconds to withdraw or face annihilation." Commander laughed. He could not help himself. The words were so absurd that laughter was the only possible response. "Humans," he said, "the exiled primitives, you have no technology, you have no allies. You have been rotting in your little solar system for a decade." He leaned forward, his eyes bright with amusement. "Go home, Admiral. Go home before I add your corpses to the harvest." 9 seconds passed. Admiral Park's voice came again, quieter now. "So be it." The cannons fired. The Helix had been fighting wars for centuries. They knew how to defend against energy weapons. Their shields were the finest in the galaxy, designed to absorb and redirect laser fire and plasma bursts. They had never lost a major battle. But they had never faced kinetic weapons. The first volley tore through their shields like they were made of paper. The plasma shells disrupted the energy barriers for a fraction of a second, and in that moment the metal slugs passed through. Ships exploded. Crews died before they could even scream. Captain Iambora commanded the destroyer HSS Retribution. She led the assault wing, a group of 40 fast attack ships that darted through the Helix formation like wolves among sheep. Her weapons officer fired round after round, and each round found its target. "They cannot adapt," she reported to Admiral Park. "Their shields are useless against our weapons. We are cutting through them." On the Helix flagship, Commander watched in horror as his fleet was destroyed. Ships that had survived hundreds of battles were being ripped apart in seconds. His communications were flooded with screams and cries for help. "Return fire," he shouted. "All ships focus on the enemy flagship." The Helix weapons fired. Blue plasma streaked across the void toward the HSS Defiance. Admiral Park watched them come on his screen. "Activate defensive screens," he ordered calmly. The Defiance's shields absorbed the plasma fire without difficulty. Engineer Mira had designed them specifically to counter energy weapons. What the Helix did not know was that humanity had studied their technology for years. They knew every strength and every weakness. "They are trying to regroup," Captain reported. "The surviving ships are pulling back to a defensive formation." Admiral Park nodded. "Do not let them. Commander, take your squadron and cut off their retreat." Commander had been waiting for this moment. His squadron, the Avengers, had trained for years to hunt down raiders. Every pilot knew what the Helix had done. Every pilot carried the memory of Myra 7 in their hearts. "Understood, Admiral," he said. "No one escapes." The Avengers surged forward, their ships faster and more agile than anything the Helix had seen. Commander tried to organize his remaining forces, but chaos had taken hold. His captains were panicking. His crews were abandoning their posts. The harvest had become a slaughter. On the surface of the people looked up at the sky. They saw the flashes of battle, the explosions of dying ships. They did not understand what was happening. They only knew that someone had come to save them. An elderly woman stood in her garden, watching the lights in the sky. She remembered a human admiral who had looked at her with gratitude years ago. She had whispered words of hope to him on a day when all seemed lost. "They came," she said softly. "They actually came." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Helix fleet was gone. Of 600 ships, fewer than 50 survived, fleeing into the void with their drives screaming at maximum power. The rest were debris, scattered across the system like leaves after a storm. Commander was among the dead. His flagship had been one of the first to fall. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the aftermath. Wreckage tumbled slowly through space. Emergency beacons flashed from escape pods. He ordered his ships to collect the survivors. Even enemies deserved mercy when the battle was done. "Admiral," Captain said, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface." The screen flickered, and an elderly appeared. Her fur was matted with tears, but her eyes were bright with joy. "I am Elder Myra of the Council," she said. "You are the humans, you are the exiled ones." Admiral Park bowed his head in respect. "We are. We came as soon as we learned of the attack." "You broke your exile for us," Elder Myra said. "You risked everything for us. Why?" Admiral Park thought about the question. He thought about the decade of silence, the years of building, the anger and determination that had driven them forward. But in the end, the answer was simple. "Because you were kind to us when no one else was," he said. "Because justice matters more than laws written by those who have no honor. Because humanity does not forget its friends." Elder Myra smiled through her tears. "We knew you would come. When they told us no help was coming, we still believed. We knew that somewhere, somehow, the humans would remember us." "We remembered," Admiral Park said, "and we always will." The transmission ended. Admiral Park turned to his crew. They were tired, bloodied, and victorious. They had done something that would echo through history. "Send a message to every corner of the galaxy," he said. "Let them know what happened here. Let them know that humanity has returned. And let them know that anyone who threatens the innocent will answer to us." The message was sent. It spread from system to system, carried by ships and satellites and whispered voices. The galaxy, which had forgotten about Earth, suddenly remembered. And for the first time in centuries, the ancient races of the Galactic Assembly felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Fear. 1 year had passed since the Battle of. 1 year since humanity had announced its return to the galaxy. And in that year, everything had changed. The news of the Helix defeat spread faster than any ship could travel. Species that had been loyal to the Council for centuries began to whisper among themselves. The humans had built ships that could not be detected. They had weapons that could pierce any shield. They had done something that no one believed possible. They had made the look weak. President Bin stood on the steps of the United Earth Capitol, receiving delegations from across the galaxy. They came with trade proposals, alliance offers, and pleas for protection. Some were honest. Some were desperate. All of them had one thing in common. They no longer looked at humanity with contempt. "We were wrong about your people," the ambassador said, bowing low. "We should have spoken against the exile. We should have stood with you." President accepted his apology with grace. "The past cannot be changed," she said, "but the future is still unwritten. Earth remembers its friends, ambassador. Choose wisely which side you wish to be on." They were the first to sign a formal alliance with humanity. Others followed quickly. The Union, the Collective, the free worlds of species that had been bullied by the Council for generations saw hope in humanity's defiance. But not everyone was pleased. Counselor of the Dominion raged in the halls of Prime. His coalition was crumbling. His threats no longer carried weight. Every day, another species from the Council's protection, choosing to align with Earth instead. "This cannot be allowed," he declared to the remaining Council members. "The humans have violated galactic law. They must be punished. They must be destroyed." But when he called for war, the Council hesitated. They had seen what human weapons could do. They had seen the footage of the Battle of, the Helix ships being torn apart like toys. The ancient races had grown comfortable in their power. They had forgotten what it felt like to face an enemy they could not easily defeat. "Perhaps," one counselor suggested carefully, "we should consider negotiation. The humans have proven their strength. Perhaps it is time to accept them as equals." Slammed his fist on the table. "They are primitives. They are insects. I will not negotiate with insects." But his words rang hollow. The Council saw the fear in his eyes. The great Dominion, which had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, was afraid. Meanwhile, humanity continued to grow. General O. Sung oversaw the expansion of the fleet. 800 ships now flew under the banner of Earth, with more being built every month. Allied species contributed vessels and crews, eager to be part of the new power rising in the galaxy. Engineer Mira unveiled her latest creation in a ceremony attended by representatives from a dozen worlds. She called it the Genesis Drive. It was capable of intergalactic travel, reaching distances that had never been possible before. The galaxy was never our cage, she told the assembled crowd. It was just the beginning. There are other galaxies out there, other stars, other possibilities, and humanity will reach them all. Admiral Park Ho stood at the back of the ceremony, watching quietly. He was proud of what they had built, but he knew the work was not finished. They were still out there. The council still existed, and the galaxy was full of dangers that had not yet shown themselves. Captain joined him. She had become one of his most trusted advisors, her mind as sharp as any strategist in history. "They are mobilizing," she said quietly. "Our intelligence suggests they are building a fleet of their own. They will not accept our rise without a fight." Admiral Park nodded. "I know, but they are building the same weapons they have always built. They still do not understand what we have become." "And what have we become?" He thought about the question. Humanity had been farmers once, then explorers, then exiles. Now they were something new, something the galaxy had never seen. "We have become what they feared we would become," he said. "That is why they tried to stop us. That is why they cast us out. They sensed what we could be, and it terrified them." Commander arrived with news. They had erected a memorial on there, honoring the human soldiers who had died defending them. They had named it the Garden of Gratitude, and they had invited Admiral Park to speak at its dedication. "I will go," the Admiral said. "They risked everything for us once. The least I can do is pay my respects." The ceremony on the was simple and beautiful. The Garden of Gratitude was filled with white flowers that bloomed year-round. In the center stood a stone pillar with the names of every human who had fallen in the battle. Children played among the flowers, too young to understand the significance of what had happened, old enough to know that the garden was a special place. Elder Myra greeted Admiral Park with an embrace. "You gave us our future," she said. "Our children will grow up free because of you." Admiral Park looked at the children playing, at the flowers swaying in the gentle wind, at the peaceful sky above. This was what they had fought for. This was what made all the sacrifice worthwhile. "Freedom is not a gift," he said. "It is something that must be earned and defended. We will always stand with those who believe in it." On the day the memorial was dedicated, a young pilot named No Ha-jin sat in the cockpit of a prototype on the edge of known space. She had grown up hearing stories about the exile, about the secret shipyards, about the day humanity returned. Now she was part of the next chapter. Her mission was simple: test the Genesis Drive, see if it could really reach another galaxy, see if the stars beyond the stars were within humanity's grasp. She activated the drive. Space folded around her, and for a moment she saw nothing but light. Then she was somewhere else, somewhere new. Before her stretched a galaxy no human had ever seen. Billions of stars, burning bright in the endless void. Possibilities beyond imagination. She smiled and opened a channel back to Earth. "This is Lieutenant No Ha-jin," she said. "I have arrived at destination. Genesis Drive is successful. Repeat, Genesis Drive is successful. We have reached the Andromeda Galaxy." The message took hours to travel back to Earth, but when it arrived, the celebration was heard across the world. On the observation deck of the HSS Defiance, Admiral Park Ho looked out at the stars. Beside him, Commander placed a medal on the memorial wall. It bore his sister's name, and the names of all those who had died so that humanity could rise. "We did it," Commander said quietly. "We really did it." Admiral Park nodded. "We did, but this is not the end. It is the beginning. The galaxy tried to bury us. They failed. Now we will show them that there is no limit to what humanity can achieve." He turned to face the bridge crew, the officers who had followed him through exile and war and triumph. "Send a message to every corner of the galaxy," he said. "Let them hear these words." The transmission went out. It reached every species, every system, every ship that flew among the stars, and the words became legend. "You cast us into darkness, expecting us to fade, but we are humanity. We do not fade, we ignite." In the years that followed, the Dominion fell. The old council dissolved. A new era began, built on principles of justice and equality, with humanity at its heart. The species that had once mocked Earth now looked to it for leadership. The stars that had once been forbidden were now highways to infinite possibility. And the children of humanity, born among the stars, grew up knowing that nothing was impossible. The galaxy had exiled Earth because they feared what humanity might become. Now they knew. Humanity had become exactly what they feared. And they would never stop reaching for the stars.